During this NBA offseason, a lot of the attention was devoted to LeBron and Bosh and Wade and Carmelo and the free agents, so on and so forth. And understandably so. This was a very loaded free agent class, a lot of big names on the market. So it's not surprising to see that a lot of the attention was devoted there. But another major storyline for the NBA this offseason is the plight of the Minnesota Timberwolves and their star forward center, Kevin Love. Here's a guy you're talking about coming off of a season in 2013, 2014, where he averaged over 26 points a game and 12 rebounds a game. In a league that has a clear dearth of quality big men, and in particular big men that can both score the basketball and rebound the basketball, Kevin Love is one of those rare players in the league. So obviously, with 1 year left on his contract, and the Minnesota Timberwolves knowing it for all intents and purposes that this guy is a goner, it's not a matter of if, but when and how soon, and whether they pull the trigger or they let him pull the trigger and potentially leave for nothing. And this has been a storyline that's been playing out even really before the season finished. And it's definitely been playing out throughout the offseason. And it's still going to play out, I think, for several weeks to come. And it bodes a very interesting question. Who should trade for Kevin Love? And I think we all have heard the three primary trade partners for the Minnesota Timberwolves in terms of a trade for Kevin Love. The first real notable one for a long period of time has been the Golden State Warriors. Now, here's a young, exciting team, an athletic team, but they could definitely use somebody like a Kevin Love, somebody that could do a bunch of different things in terms of a front court player. They're a very guard and perimeter based team, the Warriors are, and they really need something down low, something that they're not getting from an Andrew Bogut or a David Lee. Now, we've heard about this for a while, them potentially being trade partners, but the one big obstacle to a trade for Kevin Love for the Warriors is the Timberwolves' insistence, apparently, that they include the young, outstanding two-guard who's been in the league for only 3 seasons now, Klay Thompson. You're talking about a guy that averaged over 18 points a game last season, a guy who's only 24 years old, who's going to get better. And from the Minnesota Timberwolves standpoint, you don't want to give away Kevin Love. Here's one of the stars of the league. Here's one of the premier front court players in all of the league who has a set of skills that are very rare to find in today's NBA big men. As a result, you want to be able to get a premium price for him, even if you're trading a guy that could potentially only play for the team that he gets traded to for 1 season. So you can understand why they would want a Klay Thompson, because in Minnesota, more likely than not, the only way you're going to get a big name to come is either by drafting them or trading for them and hoping you can get them to stay long term. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. You're not going to be a premier free agent destination for anybody, so those are the 2 primary ways that you're going to have to improve your team. And getting a guy like a Klay Thompson would definitely ease the blow of losing a Kevin Love via free agency or via a trade. But I also understand the Golden State Warriors standpoint. Why would we want to weaken our backcourt duo of Curry and Thompson so significantly in order to add a guy to the front court in a Kevin Love who, frankly, while he's a better player than David Lee, isn't that much better to where it would clearly compensate for the loss of a Klay Thompson, a guy who's only going to be, 24 years of age, who has room to grow, is eventually going to become a 20-plus point per game scorer in the league. You don't get those type of wing players every day. And as a result, I understand why the Warriors might want Kevin Love, but they're unwilling to trade a Klay Thompson to get him. You look at the Chicago Bulls, apparently they got into this, and it was kind of surprising. Apparently there was a package put together, even though I'm not sure if I fully believe the reports, of Taj Gibson and McDermott and Nikola Mirotic in order to try and get Kevin Love away from the Minnesota Timberwolves. And for the Bulls standpoint, I just don't really understand where this deal makes a whole heck of a lot of sense. You've already got Noah. You just signed Paul Gasol. If you traded for a Kevin Love, where are all 3 of these guys going to play? I highly doubt you're going to play all 3 of them on the court at the same time. And if you do, you're probably asking for disaster, especially on the defensive end. This whole notion of Chicago trading for him and based off of a package of Taj Gibson, Doug McDermott, and Nikola Mirotic just doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense to me. And in fact, if anything, almost sounds like a kind of made-up smokescreen type of scenario. So I don't see why the Bulls would trade for him. I don't see why they should trade for him, and I don't think it's a particularly good fit. And then the team that obviously entered the mix in the whole Kevin Love sweepstakes more recently are the Cleveland Cavaliers. You've already got Kyrie Irving in place. You've got some other young talents in the place, like the last two number one overall picks, Anthony Bennett and Andrew Wiggins. You've got guys like Tristan Thompson and Dion Waiters. Now you bring in a LeBron James. You've brought in some other key pieces in the offseason, and now you're looking at a team that is a bit of a power player. And they have the arsenal to be able to pull off a Kevin Love deal and not feel that much of a tremendous regret for doing so. And in the grand scheme of things, if any of these three teams, I think, should be the most likely to pull the trigger and would be the best advised to pull the trigger, it would be the Cleveland Cavaliers. The thought of bringing in a Kevin Love to pair up with a LeBron James and a Kyrie Irving is incredibly appealing, because even if you have to trade away a Wiggins, a Bennett, maybe a first-round pick in the future, and maybe one or two other key pieces, maybe somebody like, like a Dion Waiters, you've still got a talented roster, and you've got a big three that can pretty much bang with anybody in the NBA. So on the surface, it would seem like it's a good move for the Cavaliers to make. My question is, though, is it worth the Cavaliers kind of destroying some of that young nucleus that they have in place for a LeBron James and a Kyrie Irving in order to bring in a guy that really isn't much on the defensive end, is really more of a volume shooter and scorer than he is a quality scorer? And do you really want to take that chance for a guy that might only be there 1 year? And let's be perfectly honest, even though we'd be playing with LeBron and Kyrie Irving, if he doesn't want to play in Minnesota, what makes you think he'd want to stay in Cleveland long term? You're talking about a guy that's a West Coast type of guy, probably has a preference to go to the Lakers or somewhere else. If you're the Cavs, do you want to risk blowing that up, knowing that you might only get Kevin Love for 1 year, knowing that it might take more than a year for your team to gel and get the chemistry and everything to flow into place to become a championship team? Is that worth the risk? So to answer the question, who should trade for Kevin Love? My honest answer at this point is absolutely no one. I don't think it makes much sense, for the Golden State Warriors to do so, and nor do I think it makes them a championship contending team if they do make that move. As a result, if you're at the point of the Golden State Warriors and you're not making a big deal and it's going to make you a championship contending team, if you make that deal and it doesn't do that, then why do that? And I don't see where Kevin Love makes the Warriors a championship contending team. From the Bulls' standpoint, I just don't get the fit, and I don't see where this works, and I don't see where this would be anything other than a colossal waste. And as a result, again, a Kevin Love, a guy who probably wants to be a featured scorer, how much is he going to be featured in a Chicago with guys like Noah and Gasol and a freaking Derrick Rose? You might say, well, he'll still get plenty of touches. Yes, but you got to figure out how to use time. I just don't think it's a good fit, and I don't think they're in a position where they really, truly want to do it. And then the Cleveland Cavaliers, again, do you really want to roll the dice and take this risk and take this chance by trading for a Kevin Love, knowing that this guy, yes, he scores a lot, but he's never shot over 47% from the field in a season. He can't even shoot 50% from the field. Or you talk about your freaking 3-4 player, LeBron James, can go 56, 57% from the field. So Kevin Love, yes, he scores a lot of points, but as a big man, they're not the most effective and efficient points. And it points to me a situation where a Kevin Love as a featured player is nothing more than a volume shooter and a volume scorer on a bad team. You look at the T-Wolves, they didn't even finish above 500, and they actually had Kevin Love for most of the season, on top of the fact that he does have a bit of an injury history. And I'd be concerned about trading away an Anthony Bennett and especially an Andrew Wiggins and one or two other pieces and a first-round pick in order to get a Kevin Love. If I trade for him, I've blown up the infrastructure of my young roster for a guy that might not stay healthy, might only be there 1 year, and might really, truly not make that much of a difference between my Cavaliers team being a championship contender or not. If I'm all of these teams, I say, I don't want to trade for him right now. Let's see how the season plays out a little bit. I know the Timberwolves are desperate to try and trade him, but at this point in time, if I'm one of these other teams, I wait it out and try and get the price to come down and maybe take your chances there, or maybe take your chances that you're not going to trade for him at all and you're better off without him. And maybe a Kevin Love in free agency next year goes somewhere like the LA Lakers, which I think is a very real and distinct possibility. Again, I just wouldn't trade for Kevin Love. The three primary trade partners that I've seen, I just don't think it's appealing enough, in my opinion, where, the risks and rewards balance out where you can justify the risk because of the huge rewards. I just don't see where the rewards are all that significant, frankly, if you trade for them.